My Hero's Once Justice is right around the corner. For people who don't know, I'm a massive My Hero fan, and I wasn't really doing the whole anime thing on YouTube during the announcement cycle for Once Justice, so I wasn't able to cover it as much as I would have liked to. But now that I've been doing this anime thing for about a month, I want to talk about potential DLC characters for this game. I did a lot of research for this one, and I've done a lot of thinking about it, so I'd really appreciate you sticking around through the whole video and letting me know what you thought of my predictions. I'm not going to explain each and every character on the roster, and instead, I'm going to show you each roster I've come up with, and then kind of explain my thought process that went into it. That's because I have 4 different predictions to show you here, 4 different types of rosters, because I'm assuming different things the way I think about it. So again, it's kind of complicated, but I'll explain it as we go. Oh, quick, one more thing before I jump into the video. I want to go ahead and thank Avatar Yaya. He's another anime YouTube content creator, whatever you want to call us. He actually supplied the gameplay for this video, so if you appreciate him doing that, make sure you go let him know, leave some love on his channel. He definitely deserves it. All right, back into the video. First of all, this is the current roster. This is the roster you're going to have when you load up the game on day 1. Now, there's 2 characters on this roster who are technically DLC. Shoot-Style Deku, who was a free DLC character. I'm not going to be talking about him in this video because, in all honesty, a free DLC character to me doesn't really count as DLC. He's basically a main roster. They just didn't have time to finish him. Again, we're just going to ignore that one for a moment, and we're going to focus on Endeavor, who's kind of actually a DLC character. The North American audience, we're going to get this character for free, I believe, because we pre-ordered the game. A lot of my theory in this video stems from the gear system. For people who don't know, there's a huge customization system in this game. You can make characters look extra goofy. You can try and reference other characters in your gear setup. It's really cool. Now, there's a lot of characters referenced through this gear system that aren't in the game. And there's 2 different ways of looking at that. You can either look at that as, hey, this character is referenced in the gear system, so he's more likely to show up in the game. Or there's the other way of looking at it, which is they're less likely to show up in the game. If you look at it like it's less likely, the reason for that is because why would you, as a developer, choose to reference a character who's going to be in the game anyway, instead of just waiting for him to show up in the game? What better reference than actually having them in the game? Now, if you look at it the other way, well, they're not going to add their gear after they've been added to the game, so why not just add in their gear before they're added to the game? Anyway, that's the 2 ways of looking at it. I'm going to go into my predictions now, because this is just easier. So what is the roster size actually going to look like, so we can start making predictions? First of all, the initial roster looked like this, with massive gaps, alright? We had this top-middle gap here, which ended up being Shoot-Style Deku, and then Endeavor filled in his own slot at the bottom right, but now there's still these massive gaps at the top left, the top right, and the bottom left. But you could also consider the bottom row a massive gap as well because of the random character select. Does that mean we'll get 4 DLC characters down there? I don't think so. I think we only end up with 3 filling out those 3 slots we just talked about. So this first roster is us going to be looking at this as though there's going to be 3 characters, and we're assuming that gear means you're less likely to be in the game. So first off with Inasa. Inasa does technically have gear in the game if you want to look at it that way. It's also possible to ignore it because if you look at Inasa's hat, it's actually significantly different than the hat that's in the game. The reason for that, I think, is because he's a first-year student, so he has a slightly different hat, where the other members of his school do in fact have the hat that is referenced in the game. But he specifically is not referenced. However, he is going to be a DLC character. This is not a prediction. It's pretty much a fact at this point. Someone data mined Inasa, and his animations are in the game. He looks perfectly modeled. He looks like he's ready to go. The only thing missing from the game files is voice lines and other types of voice work, which I'm sure they will patch in before they release him for DLC. Oh, I also forgot to mention there is a scan that was released in one issue of V-Jump, I forget which one it was, but the silhouette of the next DLC character has been revealed, and I mean, come on, that's just Inasa. Another character along the same type of lines who has not been referenced through gear and is fully modeled and ready to go is Nomu. Nomu is already in the story mode. He's not fully made yet, so he doesn't have a full moveset, but he's pretty much ready to go. He's already got voice lines, sort of. Yeah, I don't see a reason to not have Nomu in the game at this point. Seems like a pretty solid prediction to me. Now, the last one is pretty difficult because there's no evidence to go off of, other than the fact that he is not referenced in the gear system, just like the 3 DLC characters we've had added to the game. Endeavor, Inasa, and Nomu, assuming that we get Nomu with this prediction. I just realized while I was editing that some people might perceive that as me saying that Nomu is already confirmed. He's not. I'm just saying assuming that this prediction is right so far. Endeavor has technically been referenced, but it was just a mask. It wasn't a piece of gear that he uses in his own costume. It was just like a merchandise piece that you would buy at some carnival. So with that in mind, the only character from roughly the same point in the story as the rest of the roster who is not in the game through any reference at all is Twice. Twice could be a really unique character. His ability got shown off in the show, so everyone knows what it is, so you don't have to reveal his ability through the game, which is nice, and he has the potential for an amazing moveset. This is probably the one that people are going to be most shook with on this roster, because, again, it's a bit of a left field one, right? People want to see Mirio, people want to see Overhaul, but in order to get these characters in the game, there are story things we have to reveal about them through their moveset. Twice, however, not really. So I think Twice is a good pick to fill out this 3-character roster. So what happens if we continue this? Keep in mind that I think that is the roster we're going to get. That's my most likely predictions right there. But what do we want to do if we want to consider the bottom row as blank slots? Do we want to open this up for 4 more characters using the same theory? Honestly, my theory starts to break apart here because we start looking at much less likely characters. But let's get into it. Now, another character, again, not referenced in the gear system, is Mirio and the rest of the big 3. These characters are not referenced, however, their abilities have not been showcased in the anime, and I don't think they're going to make it into the game for that reason. Mirio is the closest thing to a character who's been fully revealed in the anime, and even still, not really. Also, it would be really difficult to make a moveset with his power set, and I just don't think it really works. I think Mirio and the rest of the big 3 very much screams, hey, we're going to be in the next game and not this game. I know it's unfortunate for those of us who are massive fans of the big 3, and I have to admit, after that end season finale, I am as well, but it just doesn't look very likely to me. And last up, Kamui Woods. Kamui Woods is a bit of a left field one, I know, but he is a high-ranking hero, and he has been shown in the anime. He has enough of a power set that he could be displayed in the game, and there is no gear customization that references him. So again, my theory kind of breaks apart here if we go for a larger DLC roster, but I really like my first prediction roster with the 3 characters there, the ones highlighted in green. So what happens if we ignore my theory, though, and we go in a different direction, and we assume that if you have gear in the game, you become more likely, because more of your stuff is already modeled and ready to go? Well, let's take a look. Starting off, assuming we get 3 characters, obviously Inasa is still going to be in the game because Inasa is already modeled and he's ready to go. I think you could still go with the Nomu prediction here, but then the symmetry on the roster kind of goes off, right? Because where do you put Nomu now? Before, my previous layout made sense because you've got the UA students boxed in a similar area as each other, and then you've got 2 villains at the top left and the top right. But this time around, I've gone with 2 Class 1A students, Mina and Sarah. I didn't go with Nomu or anything like that because A, Nomu's not even referenced to the gear system, and B, it would be a villain and there's no way to place him on this roster that makes sense for the layout. But what happens if we continue this roster? What if we go for that bottom row we were talking about before? Well, then I would go with Hasume, Mr. Compress, Nomu, and Yuga. I really do have 2 minds when it comes to this prediction list because I think that my 3-character roster makes way more sense if you assume that gear means you're less likely to be in the game. So that means that this roster is the roster I think we're going to get if we get 3 characters. If we do get the legendary and much less likely 7-character DLC roster, then I think this list is actually more likely. I would prefer this list because it has Hasume on it, and I love Hasume, but I just don't think that that's what's happening. So that's it, my final prediction. The 3-character roster will look something like this. If we get a 7-character roster, it will look something like this. Now, what you'll notice about neither of these predictions, or what you'll notice about both of these predictions, I should say, is that Mirio and the big 3 aren't on there. Characters like Overhaul aren't on there. And the reason for that is as much as I would like to see those characters, their abilities have not been revealed in the anime. You don't know anything about these characters. You kind of know about Mirio, you kind of know about the other members of the big 3, but you really don't know enough. And the only way you do know enough is that you've looked it up. And you might say, well, it doesn't matter what's in the anime, it matters what's in the manga. And if that's the case, why did they cover season 2 and 3 in this game and not all the way up to what would be like season 5, which is where the manga was at the time? The answer is that most people watch the anime, and unfortunately that means I think the big 3 and Overhaul and all these other characters are going to be reserved for a future game. This video required so much effort. I have 4 different spreadsheets going over all of this information, trying to figure out who's referenced in the game, who's not referenced in the game, who's kind of referenced in the game, who's more likely to be a DLC for this reason, and this reason. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like on the video because, again, this one is the type of video that takes much longer to make than the average video. Remember to subscribe to keep up to date with future content because I'm going to be killing it with the My Hero Academia content and, of course, the Jump Force content and pretty much any anime game I can get my hands on. My name's been Vilbsy again. Thank you so much for the support recently, and I'll see you in the next video.